Hey folks, and welcome to Let's Talk. This is my show where I sit down with subject matter experts and or people well-versed in a certain topic in tabletop, and we editorialize, give our opinions, and generally discuss the comings, goings, and current hot news. Now, this isn't necessarily as G-rated as the rest of GMG, so viewer and listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody, welcome to the episode of Let's Talk. I'm back with Kris from Way of the Brush. And we are going to be chatting today about competition painting. It's on my brain because I just got back from the Sword and Brush, which is, I guess, Ontario's really big sort of figure painting show.
Are they Canada's basically only con as far as wargaming is concerned?
No. There's figure painting shows all over the country. But I would say for Ontario, they're certainly the one that I am the most aware of. I think Ottawa has a big figure painting show.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of military modeling shows.
Okay.
That aren't just like generic figure painting shows, although the Sword and Brush incorporates all that stuff too. So if you're into military history and doing the military modeling and stuff, and there's tons of like RC and like all those other shows like little gas powered planes and all that stuff.
Right.
But the Sword and Brush is certainly the one that incorporates wargaming the most in the sort of like southern Ontario region, and we just got back from it, and it was really cool. There was a ton of entries from all different categories, everything from like large figures and busts to wargaming units and wargaming pieces, just like crazy dioramas and stuff. And it was really cool because it was kind of a celebration of a lot of people's hard work over the past year. A lot of stuff that people took to places like Adepticon for the Crystal Brush and stuff like that come around, or they do like the Sword and Brushes like this year's like a warm up for the bigger competitions and stuff. And this year it merged with the 40K Classic and the Lords of War Weekend guys. So there was tournaments for Batman, Titanicus, Infinity. There was demos for Dracula's America and Malifaux. And then there was a great big Song of Ice and Fire tournament, 40K tournament, and Age of Sigmar tournament. So there was tons of stuff going on. It was really cool because it was just like, it was a big mixed event basically, which was really neat to see because
it's a bit like Adepticon kind of vibe where you have the painting competition, you have a bunch of tournaments going on, you have it's a 2-day event right now, until obviously Sword and Brush maybe one day they get bigger. I hope they do because
this is their first year. This is their first year together this is their second year together, and this first year in this new venue, which was
because last year was
a big convention center at a Holiday Inn in Burlington. Yeah. And it was a really nice venue. It was like the venue was really good. Just bar, like the whole 9 yards.
I had fun last year. It was really great. A lot of people, it wasn't, huge amounts of people. I mean, anybody who's been to any kind of bigger cons, you're talking like thousands of people. Like it was
hundreds of people, yeah.
Yeah, it was hundreds of people. Yeah. And, but I mean, like I thought it was well run. It was well organized. Everything seemed to flow well. The painting competition is a lot of fun. The tournaments were run well, and because I took part in the competition last year and in the 40K tournament.
How long has it been since you played in a tournament?
Last year.
No, I mean, how long had it been before that since you played in a tournament?
Oh, I had been doing them locally.
Oh, you were playing in Dan's at Max Aggression?
Yeah,
okay,
awesome. Doing Max Aggression's tournaments and stuff like that. And
when we worked together, you didn't play that much, so I was surprised to hear that you were going to a tournament at all.
Yeah, well, since 8th edition, I have been playing way more.
That's cool.
Yeah, I like 8th edition. I like, that, a lot of people were, obviously very concerned about the simplicity of the rules and, you know what I mean? And so...
I don't have to worry about that anymore. This many codexes later, I'm pretty sure rules don't feel that simple anymore.
Yeah, and, 8th edition brought me back in. I wasn't happy with 7th edition. It was just too bloated. And that had been occurring since, it was like, mid 4th edition that I was kind of falling out of the 40K-ness of things. And that's when I started jumping more into War Machine.
Right.
And because everybody was locally playing a lot of War Machine.
Yeah, around here there's the Fort Erie boys and they're all playing War Machine back then. That's what I got hired for when we were gaming. Right. Back in 2015 was to run the War Machine League. That's pretty much all I do is play War Machine.
Exactly.
And time I'd own.
Yeah.
God help me.
And War Machine took over a large space of my painting and gaming, and and I had a lot of fun. I liked War Machine. I never made it to the point where the edition changed and everybody just seemed to not be happy with that. So
the community locally wasn't as big anymore. Well, let's so we're talking about competitions. In the last, so when I was young, I remember the biggest figure painting competition for wargaming that I could think of was Golden Demon. And it was of course Games Workshop's own proprietary painting contest. And you go back now and you look at the old Golden Demon entries, and it is incredible how far figure painting has come.
Definitely, yeah.
It's really interesting, but it never really became, to my knowledge, outside of like military modeling and scale modeling, so doing cars and tanks and dioramas for history and stuff. It never really became a big deal in sort of like pop culture competition painting until somebody started offering money for it. And that's when was? Can you remember when that was? Because it was. I think it was probably at Gen Con, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Somebody offered a prize. I think it was Crystal Rush. It was the first cash prize I ever saw for doing figure painting, and it was run by Cool Mini or Not back when they were, I think, just primarily a website. Yeah, like they were like a Hot or Not website for miniature wargaming and painting miniatures, and they offered a cash prize. And it seems like since then, competitive miniature painting and figure painting in like the sort of like sci-fi and fantasy categories have really taken off. Because it used to be, you'd still see busts. Like I remember even in the 80s seeing like those busts. You'd get like the Marvel DC licensed stuff. There was all those, what were the name of those, you might remember these. They did the large 12-inch figures of like classic movie, like they do like the Creature of the Black Lagoon. Remember those things? Yeah. That, I remember seeing those at like
there was one I was in love with. It was I had seen it in the comic book store in London. I can't remember the name of the comic book store, but it was a Predator somebody had done, and it was blood all over the base, and he's holding the skulls, and he's like, he's doing the roar.
That's right. He's doing the roar. He's got the skull with like the spine still attached to it, like ripped out.
An old friend of mine back in the Sioux, he used to have that kit, and I always used to bug him like, oh, you could always just kind of part ways with that kit, and let me put it together because it was still in the box, and and
there's a company making that. I think it was called Halcyon.
Yeah,
was the company that was making all those kits.
Because they made aliens.
Well, because the reason was when there wasn't really a Space Marine Rhino kit in between the original RTBO2 Rhino kit, I think maybe 3, and then the classic Rhino of today, which is not actually it's about 20 years old now, but I still think of it as the new Rhino kit. Yeah. It was like 2001, 2002 or something like that.
Was that long ago?
Yeah. I remember when the first one came out of a box. Yeah. I was working. I was a part-time. No. I'm not talking about RTBO. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the one after that. The new one that I still think of as the new Rhino. It's like 2001. It's almost like 20 years old now. But everybody was trying to buy that Halcyon APC because it was perfectly in scale to all the Space Marines. And so I actually still have one in a box. It's probably worth a fortune because I'm pretty sure Halcyon's out of business now.
Probably, yeah.
But there was a whole era basically before I think the miniature wargaming market and this like pop culture, statue painting market sort of combined, where it was mostly large figures. It was mostly like those large like 12-inch figures or some of the 9-inch figures. It was really big in Japan too. Tons of the anime characters, and of course, the Bandai kits and stuff too. But I'm actually thinking of like the larger like busts and scale figures. That painting stuff has always been popular.
Yeah. I think with the painting competitions, as far as like I think back in the day, like it was only Golden Demon, but I remember you'd get like those small weekend conventions, combo conventions, stuff like that, and they would have the little painting competitions for like the World War II kits and sci-fi kits and those vinyl kits, and they would have these competitions with those things. And it's only in the last probably 20 years that miniature wargaming has crept into those.
Blend into that. That's what I'm saying. I think as miniature wargamers, we might think of it as our competitions, but I think what happened is we crept into those other competitions. Yeah. They were there first, basically, as like painting other things, and we've kind of bled into the pop culture, and that those competitions have all now merged.
Definitely,
because if you go to like a like an anime con or something like that, they still have those painting competitions for like the big like.
The Gundam. There's a huge one in Singapore.
I was just thinking not just the Gundam stuff, and I was actually recommending to the Sword and Brush guys this weekend that they merge with the Gunpla groups in Toronto and have a Gunpla competition, because there was 2 or 3 Gunpla kits there that were just mind blowing. Like they're gorgeously painted, like actual like custom paints and stuff. But if they wanted to again like combine their powers, start bringing those other fandoms together into like one big show, because it's all the same gear, right? All the vendors that are set up there are selling the same weathering pigments and brushes and paints and airbrushes. Like you're kind of like you're one, I guess, like group of customers who have different fandoms. So like, why not combine it all together?
Well, definitely. I mean, like in the painting videos, and people always ask me questions about painting stuff. A lot of the techniques, especially the things that get considered like advanced techniques, they were around 30, 40 years ago with the scale modelers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're just trickling. Like there's a lot of trickle from the scale modelers into wargaming, and it's been really popular in the last probably 20 years with all these different techniques. And, you're starting to see all these things. And I've been curious to see what the creep is back from wargaming into scale modeling, if there is any. Like, does that trickle only travel one direction, or does it travel in both directions?
I think it's funny because I think miniature wargaming was so insular for so long. They think they invented a lot of things that we didn't. Because like I can remember sitting or going to like the Silver Snail, which is a famous Toronto comic book show back when it was on Queen West in Toronto, as a kid. And they would have a glass display cabinet full of like these either replica.
Yeah, I've been there before.
Replica like handguns. They'd have like a replica, like a resin garage kit replica of like the Blade Runner pistol.
Yeah.
But it's all been painted. It's been weathered with oils. Like all this stuff that like, or like these you'd have like Final Fantasy characters and stuff like that, Cloud Strife or whatever, and they're all painted with oils and they're beautifully done. And all of those techniques were being used on resin or vinyl figures, way back into the 80s and probably the 70s and 60s too. And we kind of feel like we invented that high-end stuff where really it's just taking these classic sort of like techniques and applying them to smaller scale miniatures and stuff.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, and I've argued many times that in miniature painting, like, there really has not been any kind of innovation as far as technique, as far as brush is concerned, or even paints for that matter, because water-based acrylics are pretty much just water-based acrylics across any company line.
The biggest difference is the pigment grind. Is that you have to grind the pigment so much finer for miniatures, because if it's too lumpy and thick, it'll actually fill in the detail. That's really the only difference between like a good scale model paint.
I've used my regular canvas oil paints on a model, and they look fine.
Of course, you just got to fit them. You can't just lump them on.
Right, but it's just paint, and it's obviously it's a lot of marketing, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But yeah, like I have not seen a lot of innovation now in different painting styles, sure, but as far as brush techniques are concerned, I've not seen anything that was brand new. I mean, they talk about like loaded brush. Bob Ross created loaded brush that way, but he didn't create it. I mean, that was already a technique that oil painters and everybody were using for hundreds of years. Like painting has been around for centuries and centuries, and a lot of these things where you're taking pigment from a palette on your brush and applying it to a surface, no matter what that surface is, those techniques are all scalable and transferable. And
well, it's the same as non-metal metal. Non-metal metal is just taking two-dimensional painting
Illustrators
techniques
been doing illustrators do it for years.
Metallics and applying them from a single direction onto a miniature.
Right.
Because non-metal metal, the funny thing about it is it doesn't look right except for from a single direction.
Right.
And so you have to hold it correctly, basically.
It's only good for pictures.
Or it looks like stone.
Yeah.
It's only good from really one direction.
Which is why I still prefer using a lot of metallics on models.
Well, then the next revolution was using non-metallic metal techniques with metallics. Remember that was like the next thing was like you would sort of like you would blend the two, but they're just regular 2D painting techniques that are being applied to a 3D surface.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting actually watching the last 20 years, since competition painting became serious, since you could win money, since you could become a teacher, right? You could actually make a career doing this. And there's guys out there right now making careers that are being professional painters.
Yep.
And that's been happening for thousands of years. So let's not pretend this is new. They're just applying it to a new medium, which is toy soldiers, which is three-dimensional objects that are very small.
Yeah.
But they're artists in the traditional sense of being artists, just like every other artist that's ever sold a painting since the beginning of time, or got paid to go draw in berries on somebody's cave wall or whatever it is. I'll take a haunch of that like dinosaur leg for scratching some pictures on the wall, doing your family portraits.
My only thing like with a lot of painting competition, especially in the wargaming circuit, which is I have a little bit of experience with painting competitively, is I always have a hard time with, and this is really with any art competition, how subjective subject matter is and exactly what determines a winning piece over another piece.
Let's talk about that, because what was interesting about Sword and Brush this weekend was there wasn't really any categories, right? Yeah. It wasn't what happens in most figure painting competitions where you've got like single figure, science fiction figure, fan. Like so what they do is to try and help sort of corral that for you people listening who aren't super familiar with this world is they give you kind of lanes to stay into, right? And I think that helps. And there's almost always an open category because some people just want to lose their minds and do a demon in a cast of their own hand. Not pointing any fingers, but some crazy person might want to do that. And so I think that helps to kind of narrow it down a little bit. But I do understand what you're saying, where from that point, so it's from here's your jumping off point, here's your subject matter, single figure, diorama, battle scene, vehicle, monster, whatever. How do you best represent that? And how do you best put that on display and then are given the best sort of like thing? And I have seen a bunch of rubrics. I think as soon as it became something you could win money for, right, like Chris Brush or any of these painting prize competitions, they had to publish some criteria because they had to insulate themselves. So now, if you're thinking about going to a competition for the first time, the organizers are now having to think about how do I protect myself from accusations of bias, or you've paid a ticket to enter, so like whatever the legal like ramifications of it could be if you think that I've got some kind of like nepotism or whatever. I got to put something on paper now. I got to put something on paper that protects me and protects this organization from that happening.
Anytime you're talking money, though, I mean, you need some paperwork. And
of course, yeah. Well, but it also helps the artists, right? Because the artists then have some criteria to go into. So in the ones you've been to in the past, have you had that? Have you had a rubric on how things are going to be scored? Like, does Crystal Brush do that?
No, not really.
You sure?
Not in the past. As far as criteria, no. It was just loose guidelines, but I mean, it's really wide open. And it's. So
what are some of the things? What are the things they look at? Because I know composition's one.
Yeah,
so how is it composed? Like classical artistic composition.
Sure.
And for you listening, that would mean like how is the scene framed?
Right.
Right. So where is everyone in relationship to each other in the scene? If it's a single figure, what are they doing? How are they framed? How is attention drawn?
Often with composition, it's always just how you work the golden rule as far as thirds.
Yep. The third's golden rule. But even if it's a diorama, how the multiple objects in the frame are in relation to each other. So there is some stuff that can be sort of vetted. You know what I mean? In that case, and then palette. Right, so like how do you use your palette?
Use of color, sure, and then of course subject matter, and I can't remember what else it was. There was another thing as far as
I always thought emotion should be a category.
Sure, but again,
how something makes you feel.
But again, I mean, like these are all subjective.
All subjective.
But see, here's where I have issue with competitive painting, and this goes for any art competition, not just miniature painting, but any art competition. There's no metric. There's nothing you can measure. Like you go to the Olympics. If I got the fastest time, guess what? I'm getting the gold.
Yeah, you can prove it. Yeah,
right.
Gotcha, yeah, it's
there's no
provable
metrics.
Empirically. Yeah.
Yeah. So within art, because it is so largely subjective, the only metric you really could measure in an art competition is technical skill.
Yeah, things like blends,
right?
Your ability to like
who can create the tightest blends, who can go into the finest details, who doesn't miss a spot, you know what I mean? If those were the criteria for good miniature painting.
Right.
But who determines that? Right? So again, it's entirely subjective. That's why I don't get worked up about competitions and competitive painting. I paint what I like and I do what I like. And if you want to go out there and compete in a miniature painting competition or any art competition for that matter, by all means, feel free. If you feel like it's going to increase your level of painting, but as far as it seems like some people want to treat it like it's a social standing, which I don't agree with. No, I mean it's entirely subjective, and anything that's entirely subjective, you can't, like, saying X person is the best painter in the world because of what?
Number of awards or trophies or
right.
I mean, how are you going to measure that?
We can make a competition and award the award to whoever the hell we want.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then the thing is that in previous competitions, I've heard, this is only rumor, but of course, specific judges, specific painters.
Right.
So then what does that
level of nepotism and stuff?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably maybe one of the negative byproducts of competition in miniature painting so my experience, I guess, and we'll just kind of complete this thought and then move back to like the elements of what goes into this, is that competition painting is just as cliquey and stratified as competitive miniature wargaming is.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? So just like you have, sort of like teams of people in competitive miniature wargaming, where here's a group of people, they all play together, they all go to competitions together, they know the other groups of people that go to play games and competitions together, and they might have, they might have business, they might not like each other, they might have, played in the past, or they might have opinions about each other, whatever. Those groups exist in competitive figure painting, I'm sure, just as much as they do in anything. In anything, really.
In anything.
And then just like as the counterculture to that too, you still have these huge groups of people that show up to these competitions because they do want to play games to win, but they're not as concerned about that scoring basically as they are about having to go to compete, getting to play the X number of games.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably different communities inside the same culture, if that makes sense. Because you very often see large groups of painters, for instance, things like Adepticon. You'll have the figure painter lounge, and you can see I think very much the difference between the people who are there to network with each other and learn from each other and spend time with each other and have a good time, versus the people who are there to compete and leave. It's a bit like
because even the gamers are like that as well.
Yeah,
the guys who are there for the tournament or whatever, and
they don't care about anything else. Yeah, they don't care about else. They get back in their cars and they go. They go and they'll sit and talk by themselves, but they're not there to meet people and do stuff. They're just there to play the competition and then go. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Nope. And regardless of
because I compete both gaming and painting.
But I'm saying no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to avoid ending up with that type of like stratified like communities inside your culture if you're gonna have competitive parts of it. If it was if it was like a gallery show, if that's all it was, if there was no awards, like imagine if there was no awards.
Yeah.
And you just hung everything up on the walls by theme and had people walk through and check it out, then you probably wouldn't have that same byproduct. I think what would happen is then a competition would just like organically grow out of it. I don't think you could have like just like even a gallery show without people trying to tell you which one the best is or ooh and ah over one or the other. But you're not. But then at that point, you're trying to avoid competition. And it's not like Adepticon runs 500 person open gaming. It's not the same as like they do have lots of people doing open gaming, but it's not the same as the tournament where there's like 500 people all organized into doing something.
Because playing for a prize is fun, and that's why Crystal Brush was very successful because you were playing for a very large cash prize.
So tell me, how much was it? How much was the cash prize for Crystal Brush?
I think we're pretty sure it was 10 grand. 10 grand.
I think it's 10 grand. Yeah.
US.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Canadians, that's like a house. That's 100,000, isn't it? Isn't that how the exchange works?
It's about 13,000.
Pesos?
What it is. No, it's about Petro pesos. Yeah, it's about 13,000.
How much is that in Canadian Tire dollars?
In Canadian Tire dollars, that's a lot of Canadian Tire dollars.
That's a lot of Canadian.
to just Canadian ourselves out here for a second.
Yeah, okay.
But the Crystal Brush is done though, isn't it? There was some announcement.
Well,
do we know what's happening with it?
The rumor was that I had heard was that they were shutting it down, and this was the rumor was already flying around at Adepticon when we were there.
Because didn't they have not the same judges out that year?
You know what? I don't know because I didn't bring any models to
actually do it this year.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, because when I've competed, I didn't last year or the year previous. Sorry, I had entered a model from Creature Caster, and that was the only time that I've really kind of spent time on a model. Previously, in the past, I've kind of just I spent a bit of time on this and it looks all right. I'll throw it in and see what happens, right? See what sticks. And last year I didn't, and the rumors were that they weren't going to do Crystal Brush anymore. They're done, or at least done with Adepticon.
Right.
And
but then Workshop announced they're doing their own.
But they're bringing Golden Demon back, right? So and Games Workshop, I'm pretty sure, has already announced that they're going to be at Adepticon. And the rumor was that Crystal Brush was going to move to Europe. I don't know how true that one was, but
Here's to see what gets announced next year.
Yeah, and I mean,
10,000 euros.
I mean, who knows? I don't know. Like, does Cool Mini not do Crystal Brush at, like, say, Gen Con? Because I mean,
I don't think so. I know they have a best in show at Gen Con and stuff. I know they still do figure painting. I don't know if it's under that banner or not. Yeah. It might be. I think the big curious thing is where it lands, when it lands, because Adepticon's always been a great show for figure painting as well as
definitely, yeah. Adepticon is one of my favorites.
It's my favorite show in North America for sure.
Yeah.
But it's going to have a vacuum if the figure painting element now is all of a sudden just one game, which will be interesting. So
one brand of model.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I do hope that Adepticon keeps some of its diversity sort of like in its gaming community by running their own. I would like to see them do them in, like if they do their own in conjunction with the Golden Demon and just have like a competition painting space. I think that would be probably the best of both worlds. Because then you could have that big banner company led one on top of an actual like
Adepticon doing it themselves. Yeah, I mean, and of course they can throw whatever prize money. I mean, they definitely would want to throw at least some money at somebody for winning. But they also have a huge pool of miniature painters. I mean, why not just have everybody who's a miniature painter professionally submit a vote?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have a pool of judges basically right there if you want them to.
You have like what? How many painters show up? Like 30?
Yeah. Just for classes and stuff.
Yeah, like there's 30 instructors. I mean, like that's 30 people who are very knowledgeable, who have, a valid opinion about things. And you also draw up a much more accurate type of scoring system by pooling from more sources.
A bigger crowd of judges.
Yeah, rather than having only one or two judges. Like even Golden Demon, there's only, three?
Yeah, there's only three usually. You could have one person basically just adjudicate the area, or like two just adjudicate the area, and then have the judges all come through when they're not teaching classes to do like their individual scoring. Sure, so kind of date for submissions, and I mean it's 5 days long. It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you've got lots of time to do it.
You've got lots of time to judge stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's an interesting thing because I think Nova Open does one.
I don't know.
They do a figure painting contest.
I'm not that familiar with Nova.
Most conventions have one. Well, most conventions have a figure painting contest or some type of painting element, like that are mature gaming conventions. They're just not as well. Let's say televised, but marketed as like a big banner.
Crystal Brush. I mean, aside from Golden Demon, for painting competitions in our circles,
in this hemisphere,
it's only those two things we think of.
Yeah, in this hemisphere, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that. That's an interesting thing is that if they don't sit under a banner, we don't really think about them because 100% every convention I think has something for painting usually, but it's just not as well sort of documented. And it's certainly not for a giant cash prize at the end of it all. You know, $10,000 cash prize is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, the cash prize is definitely. And I mean,
how do you think that affects people? How do you think that affects the culture of miniature painting? Because so here's something else is I've noticed that because a lot of the people who do competitive miniature painting, they will use that to kind of bootstrap themselves into the Twitch market or the what I mean, like they use the accolades and the awards and stuff to like bootstrap themselves into YouTubing or their painting service or whatever it is.
It's a stamp on their name.
Do you think that it's healthy for that community? Because there are some people like I've definitely talked to Mike about this, to Epitech Mike, about how there seems to be there's a disconnect sometimes between the figure painters and the people who are like more like the online community of figure painters, right? Where it's like they don't necessarily talk to each other and they're not as accessible, or the competitive. Some of the more competitive ones don't want to share their secrets or their because maybe that's for sale versus being given away for free.
I think maybe it's just a difference between people as far as extroverts and introverts.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, that's everywhere, right?
Anybody who's a YouTuber is mostly extrovert.
Oh, not me. I hate people.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, this hobby, without busting out any stereotypes, typically is kids in the basement who like to read books and be very into their own little worlds about things. Right. And anybody who's going to excel at miniature painting, myself included.
There's an element of hermitness to it, where you sit and you're doing something so antisocial by yourself.
Definitely.
And it's funny because I think that might be one of the reasons that I see the painters community, especially at bigger conventions, take such joy in getting together, is because they're getting to hang out with people that speak the same language as them and have that same sort of like mania. You know what I mean? That they're compelled to paint toy soldiers.
And the thing is, I think what it also does is they are sitting across from each other.
Yeah.
Whereas, we could just as easily be doing this over Skype.
For sure, absolutely,
and have the same level of conversation.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I actually, because it's funny, because I've had a lot of people ask to do this podcast via Skype, I think it would be a totally different experience. I think, personally, the social cues that you come up with when you're sitting across from someone, actually like look them in the eye and talk to them, are so different. It is a intrinsic ingredient to doing this type of conversation where you need to be sitting across from somebody. And I think that's probably the joy that those people are taking when they get to go and hang out with people in the same community with them.
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm sure they do have Discord chats and sit in chats. And
I
while I don't think those aren't...
So.
Well, I'm just saying, while I don't think those aren't real experiences, right? Use a whole bunch of double negatives. Those are real connections and stuff. There is something intrinsically different to being in a room with somebody and being able to have a face-to-face conversation.
Sure.
Being able to actually talk to people. And I don't think you get the same experience over Skype. And I think that's part of what makes these competitions and these get-togethers, right, about miniature wargaming so successful, is you get to spend this like really good quality focused time on a thing you love with other people that love it.
Sure. And
maybe meet new people that do as well. So my disconnect with that, what Mike's telling me is, sorry, it's not my personal disconnect, but the thing that I struggle to understand when Mike's describing it to me is that there's a certain level of clannishness and sort of like closed off from some parts of the figure community with others. If it starts to be about competition or starts to be about that like I don't extra high level.
I don't know if that is why there is that clickiness, because I think it's just the difference between you get the art kids and the sports kids.
You think the community ones are the sports kids? Well,
they're into competition.
It's true, yeah. Well, but maybe not. But yeah, but those sports kids, I don't think the cliquey ones are necessarily the sports kids either, though.
But the kids who really give a shit about painting, they're going to gravitate towards each other.
Yeah.
And the kids who want to just play.
Yeah, they want to win. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, they just want to play. Yeah. Want to have some beers, have some laughs. Let's play a game. Let's trade stories. Stuff like that. Let's paint some models. Let's trade stories. Let's have some laughs. Right? They both want the same thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's just a different medium for getting it. Yeah.
They're having the same conversation. They're having the same conversation. And there are people who overlap into both camps, because just like in high school, there was kids who hung out with the jocks and hung out with the burners. You know what I mean? And
burners. Sorry, keep going. I just went back in time like 17 years. It's okay.
Okay. So, yeah. And so, you're going to always have these kind of mixes. And it is, it's kind of like high school, really, essentially,
Yeah, that's funny. It's funny that you use the high school reference, because it does, I think Mike might actually use that word too. It does feel a little high schooly, where there might be some stratification basically in the society or the culture or whatever. What do you think? So what do you think it is then that sets these truly exceptional painters into that camp, where I don't just mean skill wise or practice wise? What is it that they do that makes let's say you got two competition entries, and one's clearly going to win, and the other one is a really nicely painted, let's say using Citadel paints, pack of Space Marines. The other one's like a creature caster monster, some big like resin art piece or bust or something, done with oils and super blending, and you can still smell the linseed oil on and all that stuff. What is it you think is the thing that the judges look at that say, "Oh, this is different from this"? Where is that line basically, where this one person has somehow put in more effort than the other?
Well, the effort is kind of hard to tell, because depending on the skill of the artist, effort's relative.
Let's say that skill wise they're identical. Like they have the same level of brush control, blending. But
it all depends on what competition. Because if Buddy, who painted the entire model in contrast paints and did a Deepkin turtle entirely in contrast paints and went to a Golden Demon, he's going to place. As opposed to the kid who picks up the creature caster demon, paints it in oils, and shows up a crystal brush, he might most likely win or place, right?
It's what are the judges looking for?
It's what are the judges looking for, and that's one of my issues with this concept of art competitions, because it's so much of it is like 95% entirely subjective. That it's all, and so like the idea of having more judges, having like 30 judges, and everybody has a criteria what they're looking at. Number one being, is it look cool? Check mark. You know what I mean? And you just count up the check marks that everything gets. And then, of course, if you want to do like Crystal Brush, where they opened it up to like a public thing, although that can get you some biases because, I mean, some painters are more infamous than others. And so that can skew results as well.
Do you think the name should be on the entries, or should the judges not know who belongs to what belongs to who?
Definitely should always be anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should be just a number.
Do you think it is, though?
I'm trying to remember when last time I filled up mine. Did I put my name? I think
I'm just curious as to, do you think if the judges recognize something that plays a part, or if the judges shouldn't have access to or be able to see stuff beforehand?
I think
like, what effort should be made to keep the judges unbiased, I guess is my question.
I don't know. That's a tough one because there's everybody's going to be biased.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And there's going to be some entries. It's one like Kris Belleau. We're going to go, oh, I know who painted that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and how does that impact your psychology, basically, when you're judging that?
Well, especially if a more infamous artist out there and they're using social media because maybe they do have other business opportunities going on in their lives,
or it is their business. Yeah, like miniature painting could just be their job. Right,
and so everybody was following that person as they were creating that competition
piece.
Everybody
knows that piece, yeah.
And that piece already goes into that competition already well known, and everybody already buzzing about it. And then the judges, who are only human and can be swayed in those kind of things,
or may have watched it get painted,
or may have
one of those people that follow that person,
and thought, you know what, geez, that person, when they were achieving that blend there, they did some really interesting things. I was really impressed by that, and if I see that in a competition, I'm going to give that an extra little bit of love because
that's really interesting. So how do you think you could fix that? Should it have could you put a ban on entries having been previously posted on social media? Like that seems like a good. Honestly, I think that's a good one. Like for me, that seems like a way of just completely nipping that in the bud. Is all entries are anonymous and cannot have previously been posted on social media.
Sure. Yeah.
And I get that, and you can do what you want with it afterwards. You know what I mean? But
the thing is, though, you'll see some competition pieces show up in other competitions.
Of course they will. Yeah. I'm just saying, if that was like a general rule,
right,
where it had to go in on its own merits, right? It couldn't have any previous exposure or marketing basically behind it. What a different downforce would there be on that bias you're talking about there? Because there'd be no prior knowledge. No one would have watched it happen. Because effectively, if you're going to try and win a $10,000 prize, all of those posts about your process, your technique, what you're doing become marketing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? For that entry.
Definitely.
Look at my skill. Look at these step-by-steps in this weave I'm doing on this cape or whatever it ends up being. I think that's really interesting because to me that seems like the best way to sort of solve both those problems at the same time.
Well, definitely, yeah. And to bring us back a whole bunch of pages, with Sword and Brush, I do like the way they do judge that competition, because it's not in the single miniature category, it's not like all the parts or all the models are being judged against each other. You're being judged against what you created and what level it brought. And
explain that to me. So explain how that works.
For example, we have those 4 models there, and each of them, and they're from 4 different people, but that one is from a painter who obviously you can see the brush technique and such like that you could see that they're a far more experienced painter. So as far as that person was concerned, what was that? Was that their best? Was that a gold level entry, or was that a silver, or was it a bronze?
How does the... Oh, I see. So instead of... Okay, so because what I'm asking for is how are they ranking these things? So what you want to know is what you're saying is that when this competition gets judged, every entry is given either a bronze, a silver, or a gold, as opposed to one person wins the whole thing.
Yeah.
I was trying to get where you're getting at.
Did you watch the awards?
I have. Yeah, and I've seen how it's done. I just want to describe
how many awards went out.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess that's the best thing to describe here. So the difference in judging in Sword and Brush versus a typical judging where you'd have 200 entries. I was just trying to figure out what you were saying when you were saying it, because I know this. We haven't explained it to the audience yet.
Yeah.
Is that the typical figure painting show, and I was going to come to this at the end, it's the story of who wins, basically. Typical figure painting show, let's say you have 200 entries in 5 categories, there's going to be 15 awards given out.
Right.
So 200 people show up and put in entries into 5 categories. Each of those categories is worth a silver, gold, or bronze, silver, and gold. So out of that whole group of people, 200 people, 185 of them go away. Maybe some of them get what's called a first cut pin. That's very often a thing when you win when you go to these things.
It's participation.
It's participate. Well, it's not though. It's cut. There's usually a participation piece of paper for everyone who enters, and then whoever, like, if they boil it down with top 10,
right.
So let's say every category gets a top 10. All those top 10, the people who don't medal get a pin or something being like, "Hey, you made top 10. You did great. We picked you out of the crowd basically to get considered for these awards." Yeah. And the way that Sword and Brush does it is Sword and Brush. Every individual entry is given either like the pin or a bronze, silver, or gold.
Yeah.
And it's based on your own, basically, skill against yourself. Yeah. So it's a really neat way of scoring it, and I think it's a fantastic community-building way of scoring it. And this was my end point. But it sets them apart as far as a figure painting show, because it's what grade entry did you put in this year, not are you the best in show. And there's still a community voted best in show where everybody at the convention can go, and it's not just the painters, anybody who's at the show can go in and vote on who the best in show categories are, and they do categories for those ones. But you walk out of there basically with, this year you made a silver effort, this made you a bronze effort. And that way you're not being judged against everybody else of the same skill level in a given thing. You're being judged against your own ability to paint, basically. And I really like that, because walking away with a gold doesn't mean you had the best bust in that place. Right. Even if the next bust down is still awesome, but they go home with nothing, right? You have a really good job. 5 people in the same category basically could all win gold if it's a gold level effort, and that makes me sort of like, as a figure painter, as a person who has not competition. I've won my golden demons in the past. I've done some figure painting and competition painting, but I'm done with obsessing over that level of detail.
Sure,
right.
But I'm getting there.
You're going to, yeah. But I love the idea of watching a community of people be encouraged to get better at painting through a painting competition, as opposed to not walking away with anything and not really knowing why.
Which is why I felt really bad about not going this year.
Right.
Because Kris just didn't plan it out his schedule properly.
Kris should have asked for a ride.
And also
Kris should just asked for a ride. You would have had to get up about 6 a.m. though, because I was there really early to set up. Sorry, buddy.
There's a 6 a.m. now?
There is a 6 a.m. now.
Jeez.
I've been getting up at 6 a.m. for the last 5 years. Your kids are teenagers. Fuck you.
Yeah.
They sleep until like 11 o'clock in the morning.
Mine
do
adults. Half of my kids are adults.
I know, it's terrifying.
But yeah, so I feel really bad about not going this year, because I want to support Sword and Brush. Well, because one, it's the only event I'm aware of that is in Canada, at least on this side of the
Southern Ontario,
of the continent, and I mean, it's a local, it's like a local thing, and support local. I always try to support local, and I like the way they're doing it, the way the competition works. I like that. You know what I mean? Like, if I was kind of just phoning in my competition piece, or it was a piece I had previously won an award for, and I was bringing it in because I'm just going to get more medals because, it's more feathers in my cap kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a big fish in this little pond.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And so I like that. Do they have a cash prize for anything? No, it's just
no cash prizes.
Yeah, it's just buttons.
But there's tons of cool vendors that all sell like high end, like like ammo and all that AK and all that great stuff. Steiner and whatever.
And the beauty
of
Sword and Brush is that because they're still relatively small, the only way up, or the only direction they can go, is up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and so it's only going to get better, hopefully. Right.
It definitely will. They had a great show this year, and I think they're going to have a great show next year, too. And what's funny is, because if you guys have listened to the podcast for a while, I had Jay from Lords of War Games and Hobbies on here. It's very much in tune with their hobby community, where they they host, like, international painters in their basement and do painting classes and stuff like that. And this is kind of like their year-end celebration, sort of, you know what I mean, where they all get together and like show off what they've been working on. So both Kris and Jay had entries. Jay had finished his Alario, did a beautiful job on all like the giant beetle and all that stuff. Kris had done a Roman soldier bust, beautiful like large scale one. And they sell all this stuff in their store too. So like They sell like the high end like large scale figures and busts and stuff for doing these like competition pieces, and they do a lot of they do nights where people just hang out and paint. Like they actually hang out and paint and get together and do like like feedback to each other and have like an artist meeting, like artist meetups. So I think it's great. And then this is just kind of a big celebration of that. Everybody hangs out, looks at different figures. They do all the photography. I think the photographer took something like 550 photos or whatever.
That's cool. Oh yeah. Because he usually sets up like in the corner or whatever.
Yeah,
that's what it was last year. But last year, where they were, apparently they had lost the space.
Yeah.
Well, they had lost the space, and then the space they had gotten wasn't what they wanted, and was kind of just okay, screw it, and we'll be in this space, and so.
The space this year was gorgeous. It was a fantastic space. Tons of parking.
It looks like it was
nice,
wide
nice
open.
big hotel, convention center, bar, restaurant. It was a real convention. It was a real gaming convention, and like tons of vendors. Like my favorite thing was they did a garage swap meet. So the halls were just lined with tables of just like people, and it was all so one staff member basically ran it. You would number all your stuff and just throw a prize down. It was just a garage sale, and then you would just give the staff member. You pay for it, take the stuff, and then at the end of it, like you could just show up with stuff and put it on the table, basically, and the staff would just hand you a wad of cash when they were done.
Should have did that from my War Machine.
They had so much cool stuff there. No man, they had like old like second edition like metal GW stuff. They had like crazy old like I-Core stuff. Like there was like Rackham stuff there. There was an entire like Dwarf Forge like dungeon set. Crazy amounts of stuff. I got the Dark Oath Chieftain that I've been looking for forever from Talisman or from Warhammer Quest for like.
You guys
want
to see a trick? I'm gonna kick myself in the ass.
There was tons of like large busts and like large figures and stuff too, like big like resin kits and stuff for doing like the nice like high end blending and painting and stuff too. And it was so much fun because it was the first time for a convention in Ontario that I'd walked out of my game, having played like 4 games of War Machine Infinity that day, and had stuff to do. Right. I went and browsed. I looked at all the figures. Like it was really really nice to have like this like big garage sale, go and browse, go and look at the vendors. Blackneck Games was there. Lords of War obviously was there. A bunch of like the military modeling like people were there, and then there was a vendor that does like just high end modeling supplies. So like scale trees. They do like architectural stuff too, but like tons of plastic art and trees and rod and like if you're gonna build stuff, just like every modeling that you possibly want was there.
That's awesome.
Hot Dice Travis from Hot Dice was there with his gaming mats and stuff. So like there was like plenty of vendors, plenty to do, and the figure painting was just exceptional. So I think that the
use your back scratcher.
Use your back scratcher. It's sort of flagellating. I think it's just a good community thing, and I'm really hoping that it just grows next year and even more people show up to the painting competition because it was so neat to see like these and young people like my buddy James Craig's son Jack was in there with his Joker gang. He entered his first time, and it was like so cool to see Jack like getting feedback and like like having his little diorama in there and stuff. It was really fun.
Very cool.
Kevin did a whole Batman gaming on Sunday, so there's like a huge like half of Gotham City, like 5 Gotham City tables set up with like huge buildings, and it was really fun.
That's cool. Yeah, man. And growing the community, helping the community.
Well, you're just celebrating painting. Like to me, that's always. We live in a world right now where painting isn't being celebrated as much as gaming is.
True.
At least online.
I would agree with that like 99%.
It's either you're the best competition painter in the world or you don't paint.
Right. Yeah.
There isn't really a lot of middle ground. Like that's what it feels like to me. Is it's either this hugely highly like unachievable standard, or you don't paint, and there's like nothing in between, and there doesn't seem to be like a place. And I think maybe contrast paint is kind of like that kind of like push against that. Basically, is here's a way of like trying to make it easier for people to block in color and learn basic techniques, or have a way of getting color in their models. I think also too, though, is you get some of these, and I'm probably guilty of this, is complicating painting, like gatekeeping it a little bit. A little bit, yeah. You know what I mean? And so it's like when you start going on, and I mean, and that's just. So I would assume most artists, they just can't help it because they're very passionate about this kind of stuff, and then they start going on about the nuances of color and technique and all these kinds of things, and so then somebody who's completely brand new and they just start to glaze over. I just want to paint blue. I just want ultramarines, man. Like. Just I don't make need to know why Van Gogh went with a particular shade of blue. Make my shit blue, Chris. Yeah, you know what I mean? I just want to paint blue. Like I don't need to know why blue makes me feel a certain way. I don't give a shit. I just want ultramarines with yellow trim, man. That's all I want. Well, and even just like it's funny because there's some really basic things about miniature painting that. I can remember teaching when I was teaching painting classes at workshop as like a part-timer 20 years ago. Things just like steepling your arms, on a table and putting your wrists together. You know what I mean? So you can keep your hands steady. So like that pyramid is one of the strongest shapes in nature. And if your hands shake, you're creating a form where your hands are, if your hands are shaking, everything's shaking at the same time, right? So like you can control your brush better. Little things like that I don't think the internet could. I don't think the internet could teach you. I don't know if there's stuff like that that's the same as getting like. I'm sure you can, but I'm saying I don't think it does right now. I don't think there's an accessible way to like to be taught how to sit. Yeah, probably.
It's behind a paywall, but soon enough.
But how do you sit when you're painting? Like if you're hunched over, like so. Here's another example, right? Like if you're hunched over when you're painting, if you're like crushing all the air to your diaphragm. You will slowly become shakier and shakier because you have less oxygen in your blood. So, for instance, lowering your chair, putting your elbows on the table, sitting up straight, and steepling your hands is a way to paint better for longer because your diaphragm's open. You have lots of air going into your lungs, and you've created a shape and a position where your hands are self-steadying, basically, right? You can paint a nice straight line. Those are things that typically they're easier to teach when you're in person. Because you can go around like the dance instructor and actually make people sit up and make them put their elbows on the table.
I mean, I could make a diagram and it would explain it. I can make a video. And
but I don't think. But I can't remember ever seeing someone explaining that online. It's always it's. You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I know. Because I've filmed it like 3 times.
Really? Okay. Cool. Whose paywall was it behind?
Mini Wargamers.
Oh. How to sit while you're painting miniatures? Okay. Yeah. That's interesting one.
Oh,
well, yeah, I've done it right here.
Yeah, I've done it many times.
Right.
The fundamentals. If anybody who listens to me go on about stuff, I talk about the fundamentals. Well, that's one of them things.
Right.
There's fundamentals to this hobby.
Sit up straight and put your elbows on the table.
And yeah, I mean,
little things like that. It's fun. It's funny how, but I think that those are the things that get taken for granted, maybe culturally, in this like rush to. It's all like it's 0 to 1,000. Like you're either just learning how to paint and here's how you do stuff to like you're going like 1,000 miles per hour and here's this like gorgeous competition piece.
Well, unfortunately, I think also too it's the time we live in. We don't have patience for this.
That's true. Yeah, and information gets buried so fast too.
And it gets buried so fast. We're moving on to the next goddamn silly ass thing or technique, the next
super fad or whatever.
Yeah.
What's the most? Okay, so you're way more into the painting community than I am. What's the most recent painting fad?
Recent? Oh, I mean, non-metallic metal has been around for about 15 years, I think.
I'm talking about like there was like oils became a fad for a while. Yeah, everyone was using oils.
Yeah, OSL. Everyone wants OSL. For the longest time, airbrushing was considered cheating, and now it's just a normal thing. And now everybody's doing airbrushing. And as far as fads are concerned, I'm trying to think of what the hell. I'm trying to think.
Have we played it all out? Like that's I guess I've been asking is have we played it all out?
Yeah, well, but that's the thing, though.
Freehand maybe is the new fad. I see a lot of people doing freehand. That's like a big thing. Maybe that's always been a big thing because if you get the brush control and the artistic skill to do flats, and
if you can draw,
stuff,
you can do freehand. Yeah, I mean, it's just drawing. It's just painting. I mean,
it's just painting on a 3D surface.
Yeah, it's all it is. It's not rocket science. You give me an hour, I'll teach you how to do all this, and but you have to put in the time.
Right.
That's the hard part.
The hard part is practice.
And
not getting good at the first time. It's so funny because I just had this conversation with my daughter. So Kat had got her. So make a long or a short story long. Kat has just gone to Jean Sauvé, which is a French immersion school, because my wife and I both did French immersion when we were kids. And so she's starting a new school and she's starting in grade 1, and she actually gets like a daily report card now about how she did.
Okay.
And look at you, kids out of school forever. So she gets a daily report card with basically. And I don't know if it's because we have a really good teacher or not, but it's about like what kind of mood was she in, how did she participate in class today. Okay. It's all color graded, so it's like if you're like happy and participating, it's all like pinks and purples and blues and greens are all like the good colors, and it's like reds and oranges and browns are like I think the worst one is like brown. That sounds racist. Where it's like, it's just a color
racist.
code.
Oh, brown is bad? Really? Brown's bad?
Okay.
But bright colors are good?
Red? I think it's just going off the stoplight. Okay, we're going there now. Jesus Christ. Anyway.
Sounds fucking racist to me, man.
She got her first unhappy color. It doesn't say they're bad, it just says what mood they were in.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, she wasn't pink or purple. She'd been pink or purple the whole time, like the first two days. And then she got I think it was either red or brown as her her color when she came home that day, and it was because she got really upset she didn't get something right the first time, and then she didn't have time to finish it and do it again. So my daughter's she's a perfectionist. She wants to get it right, and if she makes a mistake, no one has to tell her because she just beats herself up like crazy. She'll cry, and she'll get mad that she can't do it. And so we've been trying to come up with strategies of like getting her over that, of like how do you compensate. The biggest one is just start over, right? Like, well, we'll just get you another piece of paper and we'll start from scratch,
Right.
Or give her like guides and aids. So like the thing that she didn't have time to finish was they're supposed to be drawing a snake. There's like a snake that they needed to color in or whatever, and she's supposed to be doing a pattern on the snake, and it was like a pre-made art piece, and they had to do different patterns, so it like 2 colors in a row, so like red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, and she messed up and did like 2 blues in a row, and so she freaked out and she couldn't finish it, and it was so funny because she doesn't know what her report card or the like daily report card says when she gets home, so we go through it together, and she was, I think, more upset that she wasn't one of the like productive active colors than that she was like the upset color,
Right.
And so we had to come up with like a way of like pushing her past that. And I think that's really common that people get upset when they don't get things right the first time. And this is one of those hobbies where if you don't get things right away, nothing's forcing you to play the game with painted miniatures. So it's so easy to quit.
Well, the thing is like, it's just with the paper and starting over again. People do that all the time with their models. They strip the models. And I often encourage people not to strip their models.
Right.
Keep them, add to it if you want, but move on. Okay?
Yeah, paint another one.
And again, I think that's the culture that we live in now, where we're striving for perfection, which is an ideal that's ridiculous.
It's impossible, first of all.
It's ridiculous.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, so why chase it? But the other one is that we're afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And children should be encouraged not to stick within predefined parameters, but explore possibilities, because that is when you're obviously most free to explore ideas. And children are so creative that they should not be confined to little boxes, because that stagnates and that confines people's thinking, and then they get trapped in these little boxes of perfection, and they think that there's something outside that box when they're inside that box, when the box is their own construction. And so miniature painters...
Novitiates, yeah. I think that's analogous to like anyone starting out something.
Exactly. And so, I always tell people, no, love your mistakes, own your mistakes, and move on. Because I wish, like I tell the story all the time, I wish I still had my first miniatures so that I could show people when I first started painting that here's where I started, here's where I am now.
Didn't Workshop do that recently? Didn't Peachy and Duncan both have like their original?
All had this talk.
I think they actually did like an Instagram post where he showed like his first Silver Skull, and like that was what Darren Latham, I think, did his like, here's my first Silver Skull when I was like a part-timer somewhere at Workshop. Yeah. And here's like my most recent one.
Yeah.
And then I think it was what's the chapter that Duncan was doing? I don't remember what it was, but it was something like that. Where,
but
like, it was his first one.
It's stuff I've been talking about. I've been preaching essentially for a while that don't be afraid to make mistakes. Own your mistakes. Be proud of your mistakes. But most importantly is learn from the mistake, so that you can strive to be better if that is what your goal is. And especially with like to go back to the children thing, I mean, like I think that's kind of fucked that we do that to our children. We crush their spirits so early on, with these abstract things that
there's right and wrong way of doing things. Well, that's my fear with the competition, with the fact there's more and more focus on painting at this like incredibly high standard, is it might scare people off from trying.
Exactly.
Right. That's to me that's a bit of maybe, while I love celebrating, like the celebration that is like a miniature painting competition, I really enjoyed the way that I saw it done this past weekend, where everyone's contribution got celebrated, versus some people having their stuff put up in lights and saying this is the correct way to do it.
Yeah.
And the rest of you did this the incorrect way. The way that wasn't the best.
Yeah.
And this year, and I kind of fear that becomes if more effort isn't, or more thought, maybe not effort, there's tons of effort in putting in one of these, I don't want to ever downplay that, more thought isn't put into how we celebrate that process, it's going to encourage less and less people to enter into it.
Definitely.
You'll get a winnowing, right, where people don't.
Definitely.
You have less and less people doing it, or the top end becomes pointier and pointier.
Basically what it is that becomes the metric.
Right. This is what right looks like.
And that metric is not based on anything scientific, mathematical, or anything.
It's popularity. It's popularity contest, right? It's
the judges.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's an internal one, right? It's
Yeah.
it's what do they like the best.
Yeah.
So it's what is currently popular. What did they think was
Yeah.
the best contribution?
Yeah.
Whereas I think maybe for competitive painting and that whole idea of doing a competition, you can have different paths to victory.
Yeah,
It's why I'm always.
That's why I'm
I've
a big
always,
fan of sword and brush.
And I've also always celebrated different metrics in wargaming tournaments too. As to, I actually, one of the things I'll give the ITC credit for is they have a best in faction. Right. Where I think they've recognized the fact that all factions are not equal in Warhammer 40,000 or in any game really. And so on top of having prizes for the best general and the best overall, they also they allow people to like earn wins basically under their faction and to be a best general in that faction too. Because I think that's good at diffusing the idea that it's one or nothing, right? You've either want your first or your last, shake and bake. Like it's you're Talladega Nightsing this, but there's also the idea of people still excelling inside their own field, and I think that's valuable and that's worth something. Is the idea that you can also prop people up on doing well inside their own category.
Well, and the thing is, like with wargaming and competitiveness, there is metrics involved because the winner of the tournament doesn't play one game.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Right? There's many games played. Now, there should be more games played, but whatever. I mean, that's why the World Series is 7 games.
Well, that's the difference between War Machine and 40K. War Machine used to go to the end, right? They would literally play until there's only one guy left.
Yeah.
That was the big, I think it's Iron Gauntlet.
Yeah.
You have to play until so you have 500 players in War Machine tournament, and then you go to 250, and then you go to 125. And I mean, yes, you get knocked out. Right, people would get knocked out, and you'd go to 125, you'd go to whatever it is after that, it's 62 and a half. So like
that's too much War Machine for me.
Something gets a buy-in, but think about how many games that is,
Yeah.
right? So it's 500, 250, 125, 62 and a half, 31 and a half. So let's say 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and that's it. So you're talking about 8 games.
Yeah.
8 games maybe over a weekend of War Machine. So you get down to one person that beat everybody.
Yeah.
All right, they got to undefeated basically, and that was the final thing. So
doing that with 40K though, that's a weak competition.
Yeah, there's no clocks, there's no timer, there's no it's 8 games of 40K in a weekend. I'd kill myself. It'd be just too long. I mean, you could do it if you just dropped the game size. I think if you dropped down to 1,500 points, you could probably play 8 games in a weekend.
Yeah, if you started off at say 1,500 points and it went down to like a 200 point
Well, remember
game.
the other thing is if you go to that tournament, you might only play 1 game.
Right.
Because you're literally knocked out and you're playing funsy games after that.
Yeah.
And the tournament it actually speeds up a little bit because you're not waiting for results to come in too. It's like second round's 120, but there's less and less people as it goes forward, right? Yeah. So like it's not as busy. It's a little easier to keep track of. But you're talking about trying to do 4 and 4 games probably over like a Saturday and Sunday. That's still a lot of 40K. That's a lot of 40K at the end. I think someone should try it. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Try and see what happens. 1,500 points. 1,500 points. Get like 300 or 400 players and try and do the Iron Gauntlet for 40K because I think that's. Well, I mean, you get a true champion then. You get a guy who never lost.
Just thinking about that makes my dick hurt.
I mean,
or it could be the gonorrhea. I don't know.
It makes my feet and my back hurt. I'm too old, man. Like I would have that dehydration headache right here between my eyes. Do you get on like day 2 of a convention and never leaves you? And that's why I hate going to.
Like, you did move.
That's right. Yeah, you're just seething through the entire thing. I turned to Bill Burr about 48 hours into any gaming convention where I'm just like trying to think about how many people I can run over to my car. You know what I mean? Like, if I just drove my car to this convention, how many people can I get at you at once?
You dumb mother.
I turned into a lunatic about halfway through. But I think that, like, honestly, that's, to me, I hope that becomes something that happens more in miniature wargaming, where painting can be celebrated on its own merits and not just thrown up as these people are the best. And this is an Illuminati almost, a paint that you have to break into or not break into. Like, that's
it's exclusionary.
It's not exclusionary, but I think it will eventually start to be self-selecting after a while. Where people there's like an elite club of people doing these competitions.
Some argue that's already occurring.
You think so? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've had many people,
20
especially
or
in
30
Europe.
people show up in Europe, and
When-
they're
well,
all just fighting for the prize there.
Yeah, it's they're good buddies with the judge. It's, you know what I mean. They had this, and they're okay.
Well, you're at the Painters Weekend, not me. I'm sure that's definitely something that gets talked about.
So
You can't have competition without controversy.
no,
Unless everybody competing against themselves.
right. But I think that's where you need kind of a standardized type of thing. I think all painting competitions should be standardized.
Or just both. Well, I don't think you can have that then. I would actually hazard to say that every painting competition being standardized would be bad for all of them.
Sure.
Whereas if you just had different types, or even just within a given painting competition,
different criteria,
different types of competition. So like, if the open category for every painting competition is like we talked about at Sword and Brush,
right.
But then the individual categories would be like individually ranked or whatever.
Sure.
Maybe that's a way of doing it.
But the judging of those things, and if you're going to compete
The blind
here,
thing I think is a good thing. Yeah.
if you're going to compete in Canada, then that kind of competition should be happening in the States. It should be happening in Europe. It should be happening in China.
Or have like a
You know what I mean?
competition league where they track entries and like you can't enter the same competition.
Sure. I mean, look at ITC.
Something in the same league basically with the same
ITC.
thing.
That's everybody. That's the standard now for 40K tournaments.
No, not really. The Adepticon and Nova ones aren't ITC, I don't think. I mean, I think they run an ITC at them, but the bigger ones aren't actually ITC.
I don't compete in those big ones.
I'm just saying, like, but they have their. I'm just saying they have their own
But
version.
so
of that.
many
Each one
people
does.
do
Yeah,
use
yeah.
ITC.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a standard.
Yeah, it's become a standard for sure.
You know what I mean? And so with painting competitions, there should be a standard
Yeah.
as far as how things
the
are
organizers
judged. And
I wonder how the organizers are. I wonder if they're cliquish too, because everyone wants their competition to be the one that everyone cares about the most, right? Like even like amongst the competitions, I'm sure that there's a level of like, well, this is the premier competition. This is the what's that race that takes place in the French. It's like the French.
the Grand Prix.
The Grand Prix, yeah. It's that idea of like this is the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
You know, this is the greatest. This is the greatest of all awards. This is the one you want to win.
Yeah.
And then you can go play some baccarat later.
But you know what? But with Crystal Brush, it was hard to argue.
The cash prize made it. Well, the cash prize made it.
$10,000 for a winner.
Yeah. That's gonna kind of elevate it amongst others, and
you know
also definitely make it more make the
Golden
competition
Eagle, I get a
a little more.
sword.
I mean, I can go to the local head shop and buy a sword.
I'll go to the scrapyard and I'll whittle out a fucking blade. You know what I mean? Like, if I really want a sword.
Have a door jam.
Yeah, you know.
But cash is cash. It's true. Money talks.
Money talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not wrong about that. I think that there's that as soon as that money became part of it, though, there was definitely a level of, well, okay, now the gloves are. You know what I mean? Like that.
Definitely, yeah.
That's going to change people's psychology as well as how they treat entering it and how they behave towards each other. You know,
Yep,
like
definitely.
not showing stuff to each other and maybe trying to like
Everybody coming quite prickly.
look for an edge, or just look for an edge. You want an edge over everybody else. So that's your sort of like that becomes your mindset. With that, that's bucks on the line.
And the
I'm
hilarious thing,
gonna step over a lot of bodies to get to it.
and what the hilarious thing with painting is that there's no edge.
Well, the edge would be like, do I know the judge? Do I know there is an edge? If that's the case, right? Like,
yeah, but as far as actual painting is concerned, no, it's all been established for 500
yeah, but
years.
I think we talked about it earlier that whole thing of like if you advertise your miniature for 6 months up to a competition and it's in the social media zeitgeist or the figure painting community zeitgeist, that's an edge.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
if someone,
definitely. But
if
I mean,
you've got a
but I was talking
30,000,
like actual
50,000, 100,000 person, it's not, you still have to be a good painter.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is if everyone's equal, but one guy's been marketing, you know what I mean? That is a legitimate edge over everybody else.
Yeah.
I think is that still a figure painting competition won through figure painting, I guess?
Yeah.
Would be the question, right? Like, did they win it through the figure painting or did they win it through something else?
Yeah. But again, because there's no defined metrics.
I think there are in some.
Somebody's gonna have to point it out to me. I'm an idiot because I have.
There's some guidelines. Some guidelines
like
for sure.
Like to go right back to my first beginning. I mean, like it's not like the Olympics. If I'm the fastest runner, if I can throw the fire to this, I can, whatever. There's a metric in which my success is determined.
Yeah, I think it's probably more guidelines than anything else. It's like, hey, think about composition. Hey, think about your like. It's some here's 6 months because
Right.
I've seen tons of people write articles. There are tons of articles. I'm sure you folks who are this is your primary focus of your hobby can link in the video description if you want on and actually I think maybe my buddy Seth actually Amsden maybe wrote a couple about that exact topic on how do you prepare for your first figure painting competition. What are the things you should think about? What are the things that you should consider when you're composing your piece and your entry and stuff like that? And that's become the subject of books and YouTube series and blog posts and articles, and there's tons of information floating out about there about how to create an entry that is aesthetically or technically pleasing to try to put yourself. I mean, it's check marks more than it is like a how-to. It's not going to be a how-to. You just have to fill in the vacant 3D space that miniature is going to occupy or that entry is going to occupy.
That's really why I don't get worked up about competitions, because it's entirely subjective. And
well, when $10,000 in the line though, and you're in last cut, you might get a little worked up.
No,
you think so?
I threw pieces in, and I wasn't worked up about it at all.
I mean, it's not $10,000, isn't it? So, but I think each one's like a qualifier, right? Not everyone's $10,000. It's like a small cash prize.
First prize.
And there's like a final that
I think there was cash prizes for first, second, and third.
Right.
And then after that, it's like nothing.
I wonder what the legality of that is.
For cash prizes?
Yeah, I guess it's just a prize. Are you buying entry? No, it's not a lottery. No, I guess it's just a cash prize. You're just giving away money. It probably just falls into that. It's taxable. Yeah. Whatever. I'm just curious as to like how you'd advertise the cash prize and if there's any kind of legality state by state.
The thing also I noticed too, this year at Crystal Broadcheck at Adepticon, that there really was not that many entries. So that cash prize was up for grabs.
Yeah, it wasn't as busy as it was in previous years, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, like the first time I went to Adepticon, because I've gone the last 4 times, and the first time I went, that cabinet was overflowing.
It's hopping, yeah. For sure.
It was overflowing.
Well, that also must have just been down to the amount of marketing behind it. If they knew they weren't going to be coming back the next year, they might not have pushed it as hard as before. Yeah, but like when you market something, I mean, like the 6 months leading up to it, advertising that you're going to be there, like just spending the money on marketing, right? Like more people show up, more people are thinking about it. You got to remember to start painting in, whenever. If it's in March, you got to start painting in October the previous year, September. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly.
If I want to do a competition piece for Adepticon this year,
so what are you going to work on?
Start yesterday.
What are you going to work on?
Nothing.
Why?
Oh, it's Golden Demon. I might
do something for Golden Demon.
Maybe I'll do something for Golden Demon.
We should both do something for Golden Demon.
Sure, why not?
We'll do something cool.
And then we'll spam the entry all over the place, and we'll see if that makes a difference.
We'll see if that makes a difference. That's right. Yeah.
Or no,
what should you paint?
No, we should. You spam your entry. Yeah. I'll say nothing,
and we'll see if it makes a difference.
We'll enter the same piece.
Oh, yeah, and then we can put it on eBay and auction it off for.
And we'll put it on eBay and see which one sells.
raise some money and do nothing.
Raise money.
And we'll do nothing. But we'll send all the money away to, I don't know, ducks covered in oil somewhere in like in the whatchamacallit, the Gulf Coast.
Definitely. Yeah. No, but seriously though, like that actually would be just a fun kind
that would be interesting. Like we could do it as a
how much of a factor does that play?
Yeah. How much would being known for doing it? Yeah. And I'm not known as a painter at all. I mean, I'm known for painting, but not for like being like a teacher or like instructional painter guy at all. So that would be an interesting one to see if that has some kind of impact. If I like slowly work
just post your Instagram, just spam your Instagram, which is like here's where I'm at now.
Here's the foot. Here's the chipping on the toes.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's my leg. And just
from now till then.
You know what's funny? I found a miniature recently that I competition painted, and I think I won something for. Yeah, I think I won in the Open at Games Day Canada like years ago. I'm just trying to figure out which
sorry.
I don't know. It was an Inquisitor. When the Ordo Hereticus stuff came out, it was the old Sisters Battle book. Okay. And I painted it was the old like belt buckle shoes. They look like pilgrims kind of miniatures. I had a ton of fun painting them, and that was the last time I painted anything bit by bit. Like where I just like prime the miniature and I would literally work along the body. You know what I mean? Like I would fall like from the toes up and just start painting, and not even do both the boots at the same time. I would just obsess over like one little bit of detail all the way through basically until it was finished. Mm-hmm. It's been a long time since I painted something like that. It's probably been, probably since 2005 or 2006 since I like actually sat down and was like, I'm gonna really paint this nicely.
I say that to myself a lot. I never do it.
I have. The thing is that like I like finishing projects, and to me I think because the emotional satisfaction comes with it all together as a spectacle like in front of me. I don't like obsessing over one little detail. Like it seems to me my brain's wired for efficiency versus perfection now as I get older, and I'm like, I only have so much life left. Like there's only so many. I'm counting the days. I gotta spend this wisely. I'm gonna get all these miniatures done.
My fucking parties.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Like, and so it's funny because I had this conversation with Tim Lyson. Actually, he's a old buddy of mine from Games Workshop a long time ago, but how he was, and he'd won tons of golden demons and stuff in the States too. About how he was just like, he's like, I don't have time for that anymore. I can't sit and just obsess. And he's a fabulous, like incredibly talented miniature painter, and actually incredibly talented modeler too. But yeah, his whole thing is just like, I just like finishing stuff. I just like doing it. Like I like sit down and his finished stuff is still miles above tabletop, you know what I mean? But like, he's not worried about like his color composition. He's not gonna do the art school stuff that he would sit down
okay
when he
with
was doing
that. From the color guide in the book. And, oh yeah, I like that color.
He's okay with doing it with whatever's in his paint box. You know what I mean? Like he's not gonna go searching for the right color. He's just gonna dig around the paint box till he finds basically what he's looking for,
right? And
then make it work. And I'm pretty much in the same mindset now. So that'll be fun. What should we do? What should we do figure wise? What's gonna be popular next March? I don't say Space Marines. I don't say Space Marines. I mean, it's always Space Marines. It's always Space Marines. Space Marines are always popular.
Always.
But what's something that would be fun? We should do something AOS, actually. Because AOS stuff is kind of timeless.
I have an idea, but...
What is it?
But I don't want to say.
Why?
Because I don't want to say.
Because you want to beat me?
No.
You have the same figure.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. No. But we can talk about it off camera.
Oh, talk about it off camera.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, well, it's going to be a surprise. How about this? You tell us what you think we should paint.
Yeah, there we go.
Give us an idea. It's be the same figure. We can do whatever we want.
It's Gold Demon, so it's got to be a GW thing.
It's got to be a GW figure. That's right. Although we could, if we get done early, we could always do one. Because if they do an open category, we should have something for that too. So maybe if they announce they're doing an open category, if we get done the GW one, we'll...
I don't even remember what GW's criteria is. It's still single miniature, large monster,
it's all the same. That's all the same old stuff. Yeah.
Open.
Yeah, I think we should do something that's like single figure though. Like something that's just small.
Yeah.
Because that way, if we have other projects get in the way, we're not gonna run out of time and stuff. So like single figure probably.
I don't have time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. And then the whole like
busy man now.
That's right. The whole like other category we could just think up something for, like if they actually announce one too, because I think it'd be fun. But yeah, let's do this. Let's do the experiment. Yeah. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to us ramble about competition painting and our experiences with it. Yep, and what we think it might mean in the future. Of course, you can check out more about Kris's figure painting, like including how to sit up straight and hold a paintbrush on Way the Brush. And of course, you can hopefully in the near future see us start working on the toes of whatever.
Well, you'll see Ash, because that was the criteria. Ash is going to publicize what he's doing. We're going to work on the same piece.
That's right. Sorry, that's right. You will just see mine. You will just see mine.
You'll just see Ash's. You won't see mine until it's entered.
Maybe you can show yours to the people behind the in your Patreon. You can share with those folks. Share with the monkeys.
Yeah, I can share with the monkeys.
I would share with the monkeys. And then like you can show it to somebody. Because honestly, if you don't show it to somebody, you're gonna lose interest and forget about this. Because every time you've tried to do something like this, you've gotten fucking bored and quit about 5 minutes in. You know what's funny? I still have a cardboard box in here somewhere from the you and I fucking finishing painting our War Machine armies for Mini Wargaming that says Kris's War Machine paint box on it that you didn't paint a single fucking model for. Not once. I painted an entire new army. And I'm like, how you doing? You're like, every time I walk into the fucking... I'd sit in our office, and I'd be like finishing a miniature, and he'd be like, do something else. Nothing got fucking done. And I have that box that your miniatures are supposed to go into still.
Yeah.
It's sitting around here somewhere. So you have to show it to somebody. I'm just saying, because you need some...
Are we showing this off?
You show it off? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Paint some course-based stuff?
I've got homework. So we're doing some course base. So I'm going to do this.
The Skylark crew?
The Skylark crew. Skylark?
Skylark. Your spaceship's called the Skylark. I just painted the Ion Hope. And I'm painting the other one too, which is the...
This guy's doing like the Hadouken thing.
Yeah, man. I think he's like a hacker or something. What's his name? Yeah, I like Mac because he's clearly a robot that runs on the Mac OS.
Yeah.
And then they're painting those up.
Yeah, I'm going to be painting these up. I'll probably be doing some videos and stuff like that on them. And... having fun with them.
Paint robots and stuff.
It's only 4 dudes. And so,
yeah, well, you gotta get them done fast because we're gonna play. I'm like ready to play now. I'm building tons of like the battle systems course-based terrain right now. I'm done. I painted everything I need to paint in typical fashion. And like,
nice. He tells us we're gonna play this. He's already well into the project.
No, I hadn't started until yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, I opened these boxes. You've had the boxes for 12 hours less than I have. It's only 12 hours, and I've done all the bad guys and all the NPCs and my crew, And now I'm going to paint Owen's crew, and we're going to play. So anyway.
So wait, if you're painting Owen's crew, why don't you paint mine?
Because fuck off, I don't want to. I want to give you something to paint.
All right.
You need homework. Anyway, so that is. We'll see it for more on the paint. Oh wait, not on the paint. What the hell is this show? We'll see it for more Let's Talk. This is Let's Talk.
Oh, Let's Talk. Yeah.
We'll see it for more Let's Talk next week. Hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, I'm Ash. This is Kris. Happy Wargaming.